I can't stand the thought of having to associate with someone as lowly as you any longer. Please cut ties with my husband. I was invited to my best friend's wedding and, due to work commitments, arrived a bit late. When the staff guided me to my table, I was shocked to see what was placed there. What in the world is this? There was a framed photograph of me, as if it were my obituary. Then, a woman approached me, laughing, and said, "I was so worried that all the effort we put into the surprise would go to waste since you were taking so long to show up. Ha ha ha, sorry, but I just can't see myself continuing a relationship with someone as lowly as you. Please cut ties with my husband and head back home." So, you're saying it's okay if I fire your husband then? Huh? My name is Michael Parker. I'm a rather unremarkable 28-year-old bachelor working at a small to medium-sized company in New York. Although it's a small company, we have carved out a niche in an industry that other companies have yet to penetrate, often referred to as a niche or gap industry. Despite its size, our company has garnered attention for its unique development capabilities. In the past, we were even featured in a renowned magazine's top 80 promising companies with growth potential list. It's fair to consider it a desirable company for the younger generation looking to join. I moved to New York when I was 16. I had enrolled in a local high school just like everyone else. I was spending enjoyable days with my friends, but due to certain circumstances, I had to drop out. Unable to graduate from high school, I was labeled a dropout and consequently chased away from my family home. Losing my family home and unable to find a job locally, I decided to move to New York, where there seemed to be a variety of job opportunities. Initially, I thought to rely on my uncle, who worked at the headquarters of a major corporation. However, the moment he saw me, his expression twisted, clearly indicating his annoyance at my arrival. Perhaps he was embarrassed to introduce a high school dropout like me to his boss. Feeling unwelcome and hesitant to impose, I decided against relying on my uncle and started thoroughly searching for job magazines for any available positions. Jobs that high school dropouts are accepted. I also sought out places that offered accommodation or a dormitory. Immediate start positions were particularly appealing. After searching with those criteria, I applied for a newspaper delivery job that matched and moved into the dormitory right away. The job involved various tasks like unloading goods, inserting flyers, and delivering and collecting payments for newspapers in the morning and evening. It was a demanding job that started early and didn't allow for days off even in bad weather. However, once I got used to the work rhythm, it wasn't too tough. I had free time, and as long as I didn't indulge in luxuries, I could earn enough to live comfortably. For me, it was a perfectly satisfactory life. Each newspaper delivery person was assigned a specific area. The area I was responsible for included schools, factories, and businesses. It was somewhat akin to an industrial zone. Among them was a company engaged in a field I had always been interested in. Despite its worn appearance, the company was still active, and when I went to collect payments each month, I was greeted by President Thompson, who seemed like he might have retired. "Hello, I'm here for this month's collection." "Oh, Michael, welcome." As I entered the company in a casual manner, President Thompson would always greet me with a smile and make tea. Served with tea and sweets as if it were a small token for the collection, I had made it a habit to chat and pass the time here. One day, during a casual conversation with President Thompson, I had the opportunity to talk about the field I was studying as a hobby. "Oh, you're studying this field, huh?" "Well, yes. I haven't had formal education since I'm just a dropout." "Education doesn't matter. What's important is your motivation and perseverance." President Thompson showed interest in my story and introduced me to a person named Dylan, who was in sales at the company, on the spot. I later learned that this sales representative was actually the executive vice president. Despite his high position, he was very approachable, which might have been due to President Thompson's kind nature, making me think that the company attracted similarly open-hearted people. I was just an amateur with no formal education. Yet, Dylan listened to my story attentively. At the end of our conversation, President Thompson, who had listened with us, surprisingly offered me an opportunity. The pay isn't great, and it might be tough at the beginning, but if you're willing, Michael, would you like to work with us? Being a high school dropout with no significant skills, I thought I would never be able to get a job at a decent company, so this offer was very appealing. I could acquire skills at this company. Please, I would like that very much. I decided on the spot, returned to my part-time job, and promptly resigned. With the money saved from my newspaper delivery job, I rented a cheap apartment and commuted to the company from there. At first, the salary was indeed meager, but I learned the basics thoroughly here. Dylan and the other seniors taught me a lot of knowledge with great care. Being a small company, I was able to learn not just technology, but also sales and accounting in practice, which undoubtedly had a significant impact on my life later on. After gaining sufficient skills working under President Thompson, he encouraged me to aim even higher. And then, 2 years ago, a childhood friend and classmate from my hometown, which I hadn't returned to since coming to New York, came to visit. His name was Jason. Tall and sturdy, Jason greeted me with a smile as soon as we met. I've always been bad at sports, but Jason, on the other hand, was exceptional in athletics and could handle any sport with ease, making him a cool friend. He was popular in class and somewhat of a hero. At sports festivals, he was always the pride of our class, being at the center of everything. It's been a while, Michael. How have you been? Jason, of course, I'm doing well, and you're as solid as ever. Yeah, I still run every morning. Seeing Jason smile after such a long time was like seeing the sun shine brightly. He was the epitome of a refreshing, good young man, and having not known his recent circumstances since coming to New York, I was relieved to see his cheerful nature was still intact. Since our reunion, we've been meeting up whenever possible, as if making up for lost time. We kept in touch for email, but it felt like we didn't need it. There was no distance between us. It was as if the time apart hadn't happened, and our relationship hadn't changed from before. Jason hadn't changed a bit. However, there was something that bothered me. For about 6 months, I've felt just a slight, discomfort in my interactions with Jason. I knew the reason. It was the hostility towards me from a woman Jason had started dating. Her name was Emily. She was flashy, with trendy makeup. I've only met her a few times, but I didn't have a good impression of her from the start. Her appearance, well, I thought she was Jason's type, so I didn't really think much of it. But Emily, who was smiling when introduced, showed her true colors as soon as Jason left the table. The moment Jason was out of sight, her expression vanished and she looked down on me with cold eyes, as if she was looking at an insect. You're a high school dropout, right? You look the part. What? Huh? You're clearly an uneducated fool. Her attitude was so different that I was taken aback, thinking I had misheard her. Jason and I both graduated from college, you know. We got our degrees from regular admissions. The difference in our achievements is clear. Aren't you ashamed to be a dropout? How can you even claim to be Jason's friend? If it were me, I'd be too embarrassed to keep in touch. Do you think you're on the same level as us? It seemed that Emily took pride in being a college graduate, just like Jason. She seemed to be particularly bothered by the fact that I, a high school dropout, was close friends with Jason. Ever since that first meeting, whenever I encountered her with Jason, she behaved the same way. When Jason wasn't looking, she would click her tongue or ignore me, openly displaying childish hostility. Ack, I hate this. Hanging out with such a low-life idiot might make us dumb too. High school dropouts are really stupid, aren't they? I'm trying to be polite and indirect, but you just don't get it. When I show up, you should have the sense to leave. I had my own thoughts about the situation, but Jason seemed to care a lot about her. Perhaps she was a wonderful girlfriend in front of Jason. I decided it was best not to get involved more than necessary and ignored her behavior. Even though I was worried about Jason continuing to date her, it seemed he had decided to marry Emily. I received the wedding invitation directly from Jason. Congratulations. I managed to offer my congratulations, but I'm not sure I was able to smile. My face might have even been twisted. Still, not wanting to dampen Jason's happiness, I decided not to say anything about Emily. After all, her issue was with me alone. I wanted to believe she truly loved Jason. It's possible that my interactions with Jason might decrease in the future. While the thought made me feel lonely, I consoled myself that it would be the same no matter who he married. On the day of Jason's wedding, I was delayed due to a sudden work commitment. I rushed to the venue, but it appeared the reception had already started. You are here for the ceremony, right? Please allow me to guide you to your seat. This way. As I reached the table I was directed to and was about to sit down, I intended to thank the staff member who had pulled out the chair for me. I followed the gaze of the staff member who had let out a stifled sound, wondering what had happened. Oh, this is... I understood why the staff member had frozen, but I was at a loss for what to do next. On the chair, pulled out from under the table, was something inconceivable. It was a photo of me, framed in black. Everyone who saw it was taken aback by the bizarre sight of what seemed to be a living person's memorial photo placed at a celebratory table. While the staff member were trying to figure out what to do about the situation, a cheerful laugh echoed. Hee-haw. Oh, I can finally say it. The voice belonged to Emily, one of the day's main figures, the bride. Inviting an idiot dropout like you was a mistake from the start. I was so worried that my special surprise would go to waste because you were taking so long to show up. Hee-haw. With the joy of a child who had successfully pulled off a prank, all eyes in the room turned to Emily. Was she unaware of the atmosphere in the room, or did she simply not see the people around her? Emily directed a twisted, malicious expression at me, no longer bothering to hide her ill will. Even dressed beautifully in her gown, her expression was devilish. I'm marrying this man. Jason will sever ties with lowlifes like you for good. That photo represents someone who's no longer here. I don't want someone with bad luck like you at this joyous occasion. Now, take that photo and leave. She declared as if her demands were entirely justified. The venue was filled with a BGM chosen by the couple, themed around eternal love, but the exchange at this table was so bizarre that no one dared to speak. This situation was so absurdly incongruous with the background music that it became almost comical. I chuckled quietly and looked straight at Emily. Cut ties, you say? Yes. Don't make me say it again. So, you're saying it's okay to fire Jason, then? I shrugged at this. What are you talking about? Emily. Jason forcefully pulled Emily's arm, which he had begun to raise. He must have been dumbfounded by Emily's sudden and outrageous actions until now. Ouch, that hurts. Emily screamed, but Jason, who had turned pale, didn't seem to care. Why would you do something like this? It was clear he was deeply shaken as he grabbed Emily's shoulders and shook her vigorously. What do you mean why? It's obviously for our sake. Emily. How long do you plan to keep looking after a dropout idiot like him? I didn't go to college to associate with lowlifes like this. Emily's outburst caused a stir throughout the venue. Jason's colleagues, who had been observing the situation at the same table, interjected awkwardly. Emily seems to be under a misunderstanding. It's not Jason who's been looking after things, but President Parker, one of the colleagues clarified, pointing towards me. At this, Emily looked puzzled. Huh? President Parker? Who's that? Holding the arms of a bewildered Emily, Jason shouted as if barking out. It's him. I work for Michael's company. When Jason, a former athlete with a strong lung capacity, raised his voice in anger, the room was enveloped in a silence so profound it was almost painful to the ears. Before anyone realized it, the background music had stopped, and the venue had become eerily quiet. Emily blinked several times, slowly coming to understand that this was no joke. Despite momentarily turning pale, she did not let her suspicious gaze towards me waver. This man is a president, but he's a dropout. I don't know what he did, but he must have started his company with money won from horse racing or, the lottery, and then he just set up the company and leaves all the brain work to people like Jason, who are college graduates. How terrible, she ranted. She was determined to say whatever she wanted without holding back. Even Jason was subjected to harsh criticism from those around him due to Emily's ignorant remarks. Enough, just be quiet. Jason gritted his teeth and shouted to silence Emily, then turned back to me and apologized deeply. I'm really sorry, despite taking time out of your busy schedule to come here, to be greeted with such terrible treatment. Even though I was unaware, I don't know how to begin to apologize. What? Why are you apologizing to such a lowlife? I'm truly sorry. Jason choked on his words as he spoke. That's right, it's all your fault. A figure shouted as they rushed over. It was Jason's father, Frank, coming from the family seats, a face I remembered fondly. Frank struck Jason on the head with a knuckle punch. Do you think you can get away with just that? Frank, raising his voice as if forgetting this was a wedding venue, apologized to me on the spot. In a panic, Jason shrank his large frame and apologized next to Frank in the same manner. Young master, despite the countless times you've extended a helping hand to my unworthy son, to end up with this mess. As a parent, I am truly ashamed and sorry beyond words. Please accept my deepest apologies. With that, he broke down crying. Those unaware of the situation were puzzled by the sudden apologies from the groom and his father. The venue staff gathered around, unsure of what to do, just watching the situation unfold, while Emily stood there, dumbfounded. Please, I'm too old to be called young master, Frank. I insist. Besides, I'm not in that position anymore. Despite my urging, Frank stubbornly refused to stop apologizing. Jason is what he is today thanks to you, young master. It's because you protected Jason that he could continue playing baseball for college. Despite the sacrifice of not graduating high school yourself, you persevered and started your own company. And when Jason could no longer work in a big company, you kindly took him into your own. No one could interrupt Frank's tearful speech. This fool, Jason, has lived because of the help from the young master, and to betray that in such a way. Next to the sobbing Frank, Jason was also crying silently, his body shaking. Frank wiped away his tears with his sleeve. Young master, I'll disown Jason for bringing such an unworthy woman into our family. Please, this time, give up on Jason for good. Frank was firm in his decision, a man of strong principles. Frank was the gardener in my family home. With skilled hands, Frank maintained our garden, a man of deep emotion and principle, but also simple and quick to anger. Please, don't talk about disowning him. I've just lived my life the way I wanted. There's no need to be indebted forever. Jason should have the freedom to choose his own career and spouse. Even as I said this, Frank stubbornly shook his head. I don't want to think of such an ungrateful person as my son. Faced with the stubborn Frank, I wondered what to do. I knew from our long relationship that once Frank got like this, he wouldn't listen to reason. Reluctantly, I began to persuade Frank. Placing a hand on his shoulder, I chose my words carefully and calmly. Meanwhile, Emily, who had been standing by, seemed to snap back to reality and grabbed Jason by the collar, shaking him. "What is going on? Fix this situation." Jason, refusing to even meet her gaze, ignored everything Emily said. Unaware that she was the cause of the situation, Emily began to physically attack Jason. Eventually, the staff and others intervened, and Emily was taken to the waiting room. Thus, the tumultuous wedding was called off and disbanded. "I'm really sorry about what happened. Just like my dad said, it's all my fault." A few days later, Jason came to apologize again after all the follow-up was taken care of. "When Michael got suspended for covering for me, and when you took me in even though I was suspected of embezzlement, I've always been saved by you. Yet, I never properly explained to my partner about Michael, in my own words. Yeah. I consider you the most trustworthy person in the world, so I just assumed that anyone I'd be with would naturally trust you as much. I guess I was taking things for granted." Yeah. "Just because we're in a boss-employee relationship at work. Yeah, that was me being complacent too. In Emily's case, it was a different issue, though." I was nodding along as Jason spoke. After the wedding, it seems Jason had talked things over with Emily, explaining the past. But Emily, who values educational background and social status, didn't understand Jason's feelings. A high school dropout is only good for being used to some advantage. From now on, you should just use Jason as you see fit. Hearing Emily's values and realizing she couldn't accept his best friend, meaning me, being made into a portrait at his happiest occasion, Jason decided it was impossible to stay with her. Their completed marriage registration was never submitted and ended up being discarded. The reason Frank and Jason feel indebted to me goes back to our high school days. Jason was a promising player, scouted as the ace of the baseball team. One day, as I, a non-athletic club member, happened to pass by the sports club's building, I saw Jason cleaning up alone. Even as an ace, he was still a freshman, and his seniors, jealous of his abilities, had burdened him with laborious tasks as a form of harassment. Hearing he still had to carry equipment back to the clubroom despite being exhausted, I decided to help. But as we passed by another clubroom, we could smell cigarette smoke. The door of that clubroom was open, and the students inside noticed us and came out. Then we heard footsteps. It was a teacher on patrol. I instinctively pushed Jason aside and hid him in the next empty clubroom. Michael. Although we had done nothing wrong, just being there could be problematic, risking Jason's future and his ability to play in matches and tournaments. My decision turned out to be right. Thanks to other students' testimonies, it was proven that I wasn't smoking. However, just for being there, I was suspended for a week. The fact that Jason, hidden in the clubroom, wasn't noticed by the teacher was the only saving grace. My family is well known in the region, holding local influence as a distinguished household. My father, the head of the family, is strict and intolerant of any scandal, no matter how minor. Being the talentless third son, I was quickly written off. After my suspension, I was told my tuition wouldn't be paid anymore, leaving me no choice but to drop out. Unemployment wasn't an option at home, so I moved to New York, thinking there might be job opportunities. I also had an uncle in New York who might introduce me to a job, which was another reason for my move. In the end, I didn't ask for his help, but I think things turned out for the best. After working various part-time jobs, I had a life-changing encounter. I was lucky to meet President Thompson, a well-connected manual. He saw potential in me as a young, research-oriented individual and introduced me to many people. Meeting good people and gaining knowledge and experience, I eventually went independent and started my own business. Thanks to that, my company got on track. And then, 2 years ago, Jason, who should have been leading a successful life in a top company, appeared before me, looking worn out. Upon asking, I learned he had been struggling with continuous failures since being assigned to an unfamiliar accounting department. Eventually, he was made the scapegoat for a significant unaccounted sum. A team was formed to scrutinize the matter, and it was proven that he wasn't involved in any forged orders or fraudulent expense claims. However, he was still held responsible for the loophole created in the accounting department due to his presence and faced disciplinary action, making his work environment unbearable. He was transferred to another department, but his prospects for promotion were ruined. I invited him to join my company. Jason shows exceptional talent in physical activities, but his clumsiness becomes apparent when it comes to detailed tasks. This was the reason he didn't take over from Frank. Despite his clumsiness with detailed tasks, Jason has a cheerful and honest personality, serves as a mood maker, and possesses a perseverance to see through tasks he's committed to. I took Jason's character into account when deciding to welcome him aboard. By this time, my company had become well known, and Jason was eager to make the career switch. I don't recall ever providing life-changing assistance, but Frank, being old-fashioned, was troubled that his son's downfall was linked to the son of the household he worked for. Trying to stop him from confronting the school about it has now become a fond memory. It was the same on the day I left for New York. Jason came to see me off, continuously apologizing, so I told him, "If you feel you owe me, then keep playing baseball and do your best. Don't get injured. Stay healthy." Jason tearfully nodded in agreement, and true to his promise, he continued playing baseball without major injuries until college. Jason's and my lives are intertwined. But the bond, like that of brothers, remains strong despite the distance, and it's not just Jason who has benefited, as Frank suggests. Given my estranged status from my family, Jason is like the only family I have. Moreover, since Jason joined our company, his influence has made the sales department more vibrant and united. Correspondingly, our performance has been gradually improving. When Jason was feeling down, I made it a point to talk about his strengths and how much I rely on him. Being straightforward, like father like son, he finally smiled broadly and nodded when I said, "Let's continue working together." "Yeah, but I'd like to have a say the next time you get engaged. You might not want to hear this from a bachelor, but I believe I have a good eye for people." With a laugh, Jason looked surprised at first but then laughed out loud. I believe this incident brought us even closer together.